He wanted a world without gods but ends up reincarnating with the power to summon the strongest god. Yukito always wanted to enjoy a relaxed and normal life, but there was one problem. His father, a maniac who founded a new religion preaching for their goddess Mitama, and made his son's life a living misery, to the point that they forced him into a ritual that would make him the next cult leader. With all those random men as the cult followers, they carried Yukito, who was locked inside a barrel, pretending to throw him into the sea. The goal is for him to survive underwater for 3 days and overcome death. Of course, Yukito begged for his life, knowing this was his end. But his father is undeterred and believes this ritual will save him. The old man rants about how their goddess is omnipotent, omniscient, and invincible. With the most belief, he tells his son that their goddess will surely save him. And without any trace of sanity left, they throw Yukito off the cliff and he falls into the water. His mind starts to give him flashback memories as he falls deeper into the water. He remembers when he tried to be a normal kid, playing with animals and walking with friends, only to be disturbed and taken away by the cult followers. The cult destroyed his life. They forced him to endure solitude as nobody wanted to be near him at school. They tried to literally kill him by almost burning him alive, and getting heavily beaten by his father forced him to take upon the strength of a waterfall. In short, he was never meant to enjoy luck and peace in this life. And so, as he slowly starts to lose consciousness, he makes his final wish. If their goddess Mitama truly exists, he wants her to let him be reborn in a world without gods or religion. Luckily, Yukito wakes up after being saved by a girl named Alurl. She promises to take care of him until he fully recovers and mentions that she works at the village restaurant. He doesn't understand at first, but after looking around, he realizes that he's in a different world. His dream to be reincarnated into another world came true. He immediately asks the normal stuff, like where's the Adventurers Guild. She doesn't understand him well, but after an explanation gets a clear idea. He wants a job. He follows her, all hyped up, thinking about using a sword and magic, but he ends up getting a job as a farmer. He gets mad, this is a boring quest. And to make it worse, there's Roy, who without introducing himself, makes the claim that every woman in the village is his. Another guy with main character syndrome. Luckily, Clen stops the random kid and gives Yukito a dagger. And the obvious reaction is to ask where's the level 1 goblins. But of course, that doesn't come true. His task is to harvest grapes, but they end up harvesting too much and don't know what to do. So Yukito decides to make wine, something they didn't know how to make. Everyone immediately becomes friendly toward him, and he keeps repeating what he thinks to be his starter farmer quests. He ends up becoming friends with the villagers and lives with Alrulal and her older sister Surul. One day while farming, Yukito sees a villager running and screaming for everyone to run. Following him comes a huge bad animated beast that turns its attention to him and Roy. Roy tells him to relax and leave everything to him while pulling out a book. He opens it and starts pulling out some sort of dark magic spell. Yukito is fascinated. For the first time, he's about to watch magic. But Roy's spell is named Yukito, Run for Your Life. They manage to outrun the beast, and Roy is proud to barely survive. But Yukito is mad, they didn't even fight. To him, running is an embarrassment. He pulls Roy by the collar and asks why he didn't fight back. But Roy is like, because we can't beat it. Yukito gets even madder and asks why was he even reading a book. Well, the book contains strategies on how to outrun different kinds of monsters. After returning to the restaurant and having wounds treated by Alurl, Yukito finally realizes there's no magic in this world. Despite not being the type of reincarnation life that he dreamed about, he still thinks that it's not too bad. At least he can get drunk by the end of the day and watch Roy puke rainbows. Alurl comments that everyone got more cheerful after his arrival, and shyly asks him to stay there forever. And since this world doesn't have a demon lord, he starts to conform himself and accepts his new life. He mentions that he should thank God for sending him there, but notices that nobody knows a thing about God or spirituality. While hunting, Roy approaches him to tell him about the forbidden book, something that is even forbidden to speak about it. He immediately thinks that this is his chance. This will lead him to the mysteries of this new world. He asks what this book is about, just to find out it's a normal book about intimacy between couples. Accompanied by Roy and Alurl, Yukito heads to the imperial capital. Roy points out to the palace and tells Yukito to avoid talking to someone from the city. Yukito doesn't understand why, and Roy explains their village people are hated by people from the city. They reach the bookstore and find the book they were so desperately looking for. Yukito gets curious, thinking about what a not suitable for work book from another world would look like. Everyone freaks out, thinking how nasty it looks, but Yukito thinks it's a normal book. Alluril is the only one having fun, as she found a more advanced book than the one she currently has. While heading back, they find out a concentration of people. Yukito's curiosity gets the better of him and checks it out. He sees some people on their knees and some Imperial guards behind them. With one order from the guards, the people drink something and immediately collapse. He gets shocked and doesn't understand what's going on. But Alluril grabs his hand and takes him away. He asks her what was that and she stops. She explains the country has a system that decides when to take someone's life. He freaks out once again, as he doesn't understand what is about. He asks if that can be applied to them, but Roy intervenes, explaining that it doesn't because their village is special and treated differently. The two guys walk away while Errol gets behind after noticing that her sister and her name are on the next target list. At night, Yukito is trying to sleep when Alluril suddenly sneaks into his bed. He doesn't understand what's going on, but that's what she just read in her new book and wants to put it into practice. She apologizes after tying him up and regaining her senses, and reveals that she was sent to the village because of her personality. She reveals the village is nothing more than an isolation camp, where outcasts are sent. She exposes her shoulder and reveals a branded scar. She reveals that everyone who fears death or doesn't follow the country's ways is branded and banished to an isolation camp. But she feels happy that Yukito is different from the others. He doesn't have a brand but doesn't look at them with disgust. He helps them and teaches them new things. He's the first person from the outside who treats everyone like comrades and family. Yukito reveals that he also shares a similar past. In his past life, everyone disliked him because of the cult. But this time, he finally managed to make his first friends. Errol then notices his necklace and comments that it looks pretty. That was the only thing he bought into this world, and remembers that his father told him that it worked as a protective charm. He decides to give it to her and she returns to bed, not before looking at him and thinking she was happy to meet him. The next day, Yukito wakes up but finds the restaurant unusually empty. He cannot see Alluril or Siluril anywhere. He thinks they closed it for the day and checks outside. There he sees Roy laying on the floor after taking a massing beating. He checks his friend right away and asks what happened. Roy reveals the sisters were taken, and explains the imperial system in depth. Normal people are instructed to meet their end and they comply, but people from their village aren't asked to. Their lives are forcibly taken, and today was the sisters' day to meet their end. He apologizes to Yukito, but our boy cannot stand still. Accompanied by Clen, he rushes to the capital where Alluril cannot believe that she just watched her sister's last breath. The guard pushes her down and prepares to finish her off with his sword. But Yukito comes in styling, on his first true adventure. He smacks two soldiers one after the other, even punching through an iron helmet. All the guards in the area surround him, but he's not afraid. He looks at the lifeless Siluril and asks why are they doing this to them. And the Imperial Guard captain comes in telling that it's because they are afraid of dying. Something that they shouldn't because it will happen sooner or later. And without any reaction, the captain pulls out his sword and stabs Yukito. He drops down and looks at Alluril who's shouting his name. But the captain slashes her right away, barely managing to survive. He crawls to Errol breathless side, asking why. Why did this happen? He sees the necklace that he gave her, and his father's words come back to his mind, that their god Mitama will surely save him. With his last piece of hope, he grabs the collar asking Midam to save the sisters. For the first time in his life, he starts chanting the same words his father used to pray for their god. And at that moment, the necklace jewel sprang into the air, creating lightning strikes. The sky opened up, and a massive ball that looked like the sun appeared, clearing up the sky. And from it, a lowly girl came down to earth that immediately jumped onto Yukito. Happily hugging him, he finally called and accepted her. But Yukito wasn't breathing anymore. She finally understood, and in a split second, the cute lowly became a nightmare. She used all her power to create root-like arms that dragged every guard into the abyss, and at the same time, revive Yukito and the two sisters. She jumps to his shoulders, showing her affection. But Yukito doesn't understand who she is. That's when she introduces herself as Mitama, his goddess. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.